I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Psalm 27 verse 13. The condition of Britain is bad, and the psalmist was in a similar position to us. Because he mentions the land of the living, he's not speaking about the distant future when the Messiah would arrive. No, he's speaking about his present time, his lifetime. And he's not thinking of a state of affairs that's dependent upon human authorities. It is, after all, the goodness of the Lord that he wants to see, and the goodness of the Lord overrides every other supposed goodness. There's also no suggestion here that the goodness of the Lord is not already present. He's not asking for God to bring down his goodness from heaven, but rather he's asking for the eyes to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, the goodness that's already there. In other words, he's asking for God to open his eyes to see that goodness, a goodness that transcends the world of men and is eternal. It's never dependent on the frantic, tiny world of men. And this is clearly his mindset, because earlier in the psalm he had said, "One thing have I desired of the Lord, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple." He believes that he can dwell in the Lord's house and behold his beauty, and that he can fellowship with him during the days of his life here, not just some distant eternity. Isn't that wonderful? He says, I would have fainted. He would have completely broken down and been worn out if he hadn't had the faith to discern the goodness of the Lord that's always around him. Perhaps, like us, he was surrounded by so much bad news that the goodness of the Lord was in danger of being obscured to one degree or another. He does, after all, speak of an host encamping against him and wars rising up against him, and he concludes the psalm with the words, "Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord." The enemy of our souls wants to blind us to the goodness of the Lord, which even now surrounds us and is within us. And so the psalmist is addressing himself. He's speaking to himself like a little child might speak to himself in a dark room, or whistle on the way to school to buck up his courage. Now, it goes without saying that we need faith to see the goodness of the Lord around us. Now, that's relatively easy in, say, a woodland, or under a starry sky, or beside a beautiful river, or on the looking out to sea. We hardly need faith to see his goodness then, but we do need faith to see his goodness elsewhere, particularly in the world of human beings. That is what the psalmist is praying for, the faith to see the Lord's goodness everywhere, including and maybe especially in the world of human beings. That's where he needs some assistance, and that's where we need assistance so often. Now, it struck me that the words, "unless I had believed to see," could be hyphenated. Unless I had believed to see. Not just believed and not just seeing by some sort of mental effort, but believed to see. Faith seeing. The inner eyes of faith. There's something wonderfully joyous about this expression. It describes the spontaneous leap of faith recognition expressed so vividly in that Greek word, eureka. I see it. We need faith to see what is before our very eyes. Otherwise, we shall miss it. Now, I'll just finish with a simple illustration. A friend recently sent me a picture of an eagle hovering over its nest. It was somebody had painted this picture. And when it was turned upside down, it became a bearded face of a man who was obviously intended to be Jesus. Now, at first I couldn't see it. Then suddenly it became obvious, and I saw the face. That's the eureka moment, that's suddenly seeing what is already before our eyes. May God help us to believe to the point of seeing his goodness, which is already around us. Many Christians are growing weary and even cynical at the amount of bad news, but we need to have eyes to see the goodness of the Lord, which is already around us. Now, what is the goodness of the Lord? The election of a president in America? or a party in the United Kingdom who will destroy leftism, the overthrow of the EU, anti-abortion laws passed, illegals deported and borders sealed. All these things would be good. We may even call them blessings, but they are not the goodness of the Lord. And it's a moot point. What is the goodness of the Lord? May we have faith to recognize, to see and to recognize what is the goodness of the Lord. Amen.